It's the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. Our conversation with Bob Pollock from the Extension Service, brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. There he is. Bob Pollock on the line with us. You can give him a call at 479-1160 if you have a question about lawns, gardens, trees, and such. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good today, and you?
Fabulously well. So what are we talking about? What's going on out there in the world of lawns and gardens and plants and trees right now? What should we be thinking about here in the fall?
Well, fall is usually a great time to plant plants, especially trees. Although, both trees and shrubs, it's normally a great time to do that. And we still can do that. Here we are in October, and many times in the nursery, we've got a couple of options. We've got many plants that are already dug. We've got a lot of trees and shrubs that are already in containers. They've been grown in a container, which gives us much more flexibility. We also have ball and burlap plants. And typically trees will be, when they dig them in the fall, they wait till their leaves drop. Then they'll dig them because they've gone dormant at that point. So there's a lot less stress on the plant to dig it when the leaves are off the tree, which then starts to move us into that fall planting time for many species of trees. So that is something if you need or want to plant some plants this fall, get the ground ready, and then go check things out, see what's available, and it's still a wonderful time of year to do that. The caveat this year, so far,
is you got to water them.
Still pretty dry. Yeah, and typically we would have to water them anyway, because they're either in a container or they're in a ball and burlap situation where some of the roots have been removed. So we do need to normally water anyway, or at least check that to make sure that root ball stays moist for that period of time until that plant can get established.
But in another year, we might actually have water, and we don't this year.
That's for sure. So we have to pay extra attention to that. And even plants that you've planted throughout the growing season this year, it's good to check those and make sure that root ball does have moisture in it, because they can dry out, and especially given the conditions we have, they can dry out very quickly. And unfortunately, you may have already found that out if you hadn't kept up with watering things on a regular basis or in checking them to make sure they're okay.
Earlier this summer, I asked you about the ornamental grasses that grow into their own little shrub, basically. And they can be 2 feet tall. They can be 3 feet tall, something in that range. And we talked about that then. Would this be a good time to plant them now, because
Sure.
they're soon going to enter dormancy too?
Yes. Yeah, so any of those grasses are good candidates to be planted now. Some of the miscanthus varieties can get 7, 8, 9 feet tall. So there's a big size range within all the various grass species, and all kind of different textures and colors and to choose from.
Do you have to, and this would probably be more of a growing season question than a dormancy question, but do you have to be pretty vigilant about trimming those up before they get to seed stage? Otherwise, they'll spread beyond what you want them to be, or
some
where
are
you
more
want them to be.
Prolific than others. Many of them we let them. That's part of the ornamental interest, especially this time of year. Some of them get some nice colors to the fall color. Others just kind of turn brown or turn beige. But those seed heads are all there waving in the wind. And so that's part of the ornamental effects of those plants. So many times we just leave that, and then in the spring, of course, winter will sometimes knock those down and break them off, and they look a lot more messier in the springtime after winter, and the snow beats them down. But that's usually when we'll go in and cut them off. before the new growth starts to come up through the middle of them, and then they're ready to go again. But you can also choose to, if you don't want those seed heads on there, and some varieties will spread and others won't spread at all.
Mm-hmm. You have, in the past, talked about this, I think at this time of the year, that this is probably the best time to take a look up at the trees to see where your dead branches are. While they still have leaves on them, they're much easier to identify the ones that are dead than the ones that still have some life in them. So I would guess people should start doing that now, too.
Definitely. It's a good time as the colors start to change, and I've seen some very vivid colors.
Me too, unexpectedly.
Yes.
Because it's been so dry.
Yeah, but so some of the trees, some are a little duller than others, but there's been a number of them that have been very bright, very nice fall color. So hopefully that will continue. But as those leaves change and they drop, yes, that's a great time to look up, make an assessment of whether the tree's healthy or not. And even when the leaves are on, you can kind of get an indication. Is that canopy full of leaves? Are there gaps in there? If there are branches without leaves, then you can make a mental note there that may need to check that out later. And then if there are, it is much easier to see what's going on up in this tree structure in the canopy and whether something is alive or dead as those leaves fall off. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully you're able to get that taken care of, because any of those dead branches preferably should be removed just from a safety perspective, but also the health of the tree. It's important to have those properly removed so that the tree can grow over that cut surface and seal that off so that there isn't any further decay, especially into the trunk of the tree. And that's oftentimes what happens, probably just about 100% of the time, when we top trees, when we give them a haircut, which we should never do, but
sometimes the power company makes that determination, though.
Yes, along the power lines, that unfortunately is an exception to that. Sometimes it'd be just better to remove them along there and be done with it, but in a situation where that's not the case, that is not going to solve the problem, and it's going to make it worse. Mm-hmm. And we keep repeating that message, but I keep seeing trees that get a major haircut. And it just causes more decay because those branches are usually too big. It takes too many years for that to wall off that damage and prevent from further decay. So then you get another branch or you get it into the trunk, and then eventually you end up taking it down.
You have yourself a big hollow tree and no Keebler elves to live in it.
Yeah, there's a couple exceptions there with pollarding, which is a practice that isn't done that much here, although occasionally you'll see that, where every year they'll cut it back severely, mm-hmm. and then they'll let it grow out for a season, then they'll cut it back severely. But that's more of a specialized training form, and I think that's been done more in Europe than it ever has here. But
yeah. All right. So those are some of the issues to look at right now. The drought, of course, continues. We continue on the drought watch, and there have been others added to it. I think 3 more counties this week were added to the drought warning list. So, again, that conservation becomes very, very important.
Definitely. Yep, take care. And many things like yards will go dormant, and hopefully there aren't any other issues there, because we can get into the Japanese beetle grubs, and then there's other grubs, some of the June beetles, May beetles, European chafers. Those are all insects that have larval stages that will chew roots of turf.
Mm-hmm. And so stink bug season is here, isn't it?
It's gone dormant. Go again.
Stink bug season is here too. Yay!
Yes, they've been around. They may have been camouflaged. You may not have noticed them, but now, as we move into fall, this also is that time where insects start to look for places to spend the winter, mm-hmm. If they're overwintering as adults. So oftentimes they seem to seek out our dwellings as an opportunity to hang out over the winter.
Yeah.
Most of us don't prefer to have happen, but yeah, the stink bugs fit into that group, and the cluster flies and those big black ugly flies that, where did they come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a few other things too.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really good year for centipedes if you're a centipede lover. All right.
Yeah. And millipedes.
And millipedes, centipedes and millipedes too. All right. Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Have a great weekend.
You too.